Alright, let's dive into something that's got the music world buzzing, or maybe scratching their heads. Avenged Sevenfold just dropped Statica, an EP that's as polarizing as it is unexpected. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let me hit you with this: Statica isn't just an album, it's a statement. And personally, I think that's what makes it so fascinating. This band has never been afraid to alienate their fanbase, and Statica is no exception. From my perspective, it's like they're saying, we're not here to please you, we're here to explore. And whether you love it or hate it, you've got to respect that. Now, let's start with the hook. Statica is an electronic record. If you've been following A7X, this shouldn't come as a shock. Their journey into cosmic, sci-fi themed progressive metal started with The Stage and went full throttle on Life Is But a Dream. So when they announced an electronic EP, I was more intrigued than surprised. What makes this really interesting is how it ties into their recent focus on blockchain and NFTs. It's like they're not just experimenting with sound but with the very concept of what music can be in the digital age. One thing that immediately stands out is how this EP feels like a natural extension of their evolution, even if it's not what fans were clamoring for. But here's the thing: Statica is only 18 minutes long, and in that short time, it manages to be both ambitious and underwhelming. The VGM-inspired tone works. It feels right at home with their electronic fixation. And despite the overload of bleeps, bloops, and whirs, there's still a focus on actual instrumentation. What many people don't realize is how much effort goes into making something sound this synthetic, while still keeping it organic. The drumming on the title track, for instance, is infectious. It's not Brooks Wackerman's most expressive work, but it gives the song a pulse, a solid foundation to build on. And that's where I think the EP shines. It's not about virtuosity, it's about vibe. Now let's talk about Shadow's vocals. They're drenched in effects, robotic warbles, autotune, and honestly it works for the project. But here's where I have to be real: it's not particularly enjoyable. It's like they're so focused on creating a unified sonic template that they forget to make it memorable. If you take a step back and think about it, Statica feels more like a detour than a destination. It's an experiment, sure, but one that doesn't quite stick the landing. What this really suggests is that A7X is still figuring out how to balance their avant-garde ambitions with their core strengths. And that's the bigger question here: what does it mean for a band like Avenged Sevenfold to keep pushing boundaries? Personally, I think it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, they're one of the few mainstream bands willing to take risks. On the other, those risks don't always pay off. Statica isn't a dumpster fire, but it's not a masterpiece either. It's just there. A detail I find fascinating is how this EP feels like it's more about the shock value of A7X going full electronica than about the music itself. And that's a shame, because when they're firing on all cylinders, they're unstoppable. So, where does this leave us? Statica is a 4 out of 10 for me, but it's not a failure in the grand scheme of things. What it really shows is that Avenged Sevenfold is still a band unafraid to fail, and that's something worth celebrating. In my opinion, the best art comes from artists who aren't afraid to fall flat on their faces. Maybe next time, they'll try a little better. Or maybe they won't, and that's okay too. Because at the end of the day, they're not making music for us, they're making it for themselves. And that, my friends, is what makes them Avenged Sevenfold. So, what do you think? Is Statica a bold step forward or a misstep? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, thanks for sticking around. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep listening.